We're honored to have the candidates running for the assembly seat in our district, Assembly Member Mathylde Frontus and Mark Szuszkiewicz. And I hope I pronounced your name right.
No one gets it right, though.
Oh,
okay.
I'll let when you do your opening remarks, I'll let you do it more. Let me give you the rules really quick. First of all, everyone, no moving around. There's a distance here that we have to maintain. Each candidate will receive 3 interrupted minutes for an opening remarks, 2 minutes to respond to each of 3 questions. 1 minute, the opponent will be able to rebut that question, and each will receive 2 minutes for closing remarks. We had a coin toss. Mark won the coin toss, so he will close, and Assemblymember Frontus will open to your opening remarks.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. I'm Assemblywoman Mathylde Frontus. It's really an honor for me to be here tonight. I want to start off by thanking the Dyker Heights Civic Association for the good work that they do year-round, but specifically for hosting these candidate debates every couple of years. I've come to look forward to them and enjoy them and participate in them myself. I'd like to thank John for moderating tonight's forum, as well as my opponent Mark for being here tonight to debate with me. I'm here tonight speaking. There are numerous cameras, so forgive me if I'm not looking into any particular one, but I'm speaking to my constituents and voters, frankly, across the 46th Assembly District, and I'm here asking for your support for another term in Albany. It was just 2 years ago that I stood right where I am tonight as a first-time candidate. And as many as you know, 2 years ago, I was not a political insider. I was not part of any political club, and I had no political connections. My claim to fame was that I was just a community leader, a community organizer, someone who had done some work in my neighborhood, and I decided to throw my hat in the ring for this seat. Once I got to Albany, there was no greater proof that I was able to see with my eyes that elections matter. Boy, do elections matter. Little did I know that I was going to be part of a cohort of legislators which passed sweeping historic legislation in 2019. I want to say that I'm really proud of my record. I'm really proud of what I've been able to do over the last 2 years. Together with the democratically controlled New York State legislature, we were able to extend more rights and more privileges for the citizens of New York, more rights for women, for children, for LGBT, for immigrants, for juveniles, and it's something that I'm really proud of. I'm also proud that I was able to introduce some 20 to 25 pieces of legislation. About maybe 20% of them pass. I'm not counting, but I'm also proud to know that I have bills that were able to gain my colleagues' support in my first term. I'm also really proud that I've been able to bring over $300,000 here to Southern Brooklyn, including programs right here in Dyker Heights, the Dyker Heights Library, NIA, the Fort Hamilton Library in Bay Ridge, the Arab American Association, so many great programs, the Bay Ridge Senior Center. With all of that said, I just want everyone to know that I'm still fired up. I'm still very excited to represent the people of the 46th Assembly District, and I'm asking for your support and your confidence in me so that I can serve another term in Albany. Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblymember Frontus. Mark, and please, the hardest part of my evening is pronouncing your name, so
it's shoes
I
and
apologize.
A pair of shoes, then Skev, and then each. So, my name is Mark Szuszkiewicz. Thank you, everyone, for organizing this event. Thank you to my opponent, Mathylde, for coming. And thank you for everyone out there watching. Again, my name is Mark Szuszkiewicz. I've had a broad spectrum of knowledge in many different fields in blue-collar and white-collar professions, financial advisor, real estate salesperson, truck driver, the list goes on and on. But I decided to run for office because I don't trust current politicians. I don't trust the corruption that's out there. And being a keyboard warrior on social media isn't enough, and the only way to actually enact change is to put my hat in the ring and and try to take on Albany and a lot of the corruption and the things that are going on. I am the Republican and the Conservative Party nominee, but for those of you who are Democrat, the state assembly currently is over 70% Democrat, so a vote for me doesn't mean drastic Republican ideology. A lot of my ideas are nonpartisan. I have ideas with my financial services background, creative ideas like funding programs like affordable housing with municipal bonds, taking on the banks and their overdraft fees that take advantage of the less fortunate, and a lot of other nonpartisan ideas. And I believe that there's a middle ground in a lot of the issues out there that we're not seeing any candidate go with the middle ground. We're seeing a lot of the candidates go with one side of the aisle, and right now it's a majority of Democrats out there that are soft on crime and a lot of other issues that I don't like to see. And I want to fight for the people, and that's why I'm doing this. And I hope that the people on Election Day, November 3rd, decide that they're going to trust me to go and fight for them. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me start with a question for Assemblymember Frontus. You've spoken out about the need for speed cameras in school zones and said that the safety of our children should be our first concern, primary concern. Are you pleased that New York City has activated cameras in 750 school zones and lowered speed limits in those zones by 5 miles per hour, or does more need to be done?
I'm pleased, and I know that it's working. I'm pleased with what we've done, and I like to joke sometimes and say that I know that it's working by the number of angry messages and text messages that I receive. People sometimes think that we were too heavy-handed. They think that we came down too strong, but I disagree. I disagree privately and publicly, and I think that we did it just right. Now we need for people to follow the laws that we pass. We need for people to abide by those speed regulations. All jokes aside, I want to say that this is a very serious matter. You know, here in southern Brooklyn, we continue to be inundated with a number of pedestrian traffic accidents, whether it's someone hitting a child on a bicycle or rollerblading or whatever the case is. We've just had too many accidents here in southern Brooklyn. So I think that what we did earlier this year and last year was appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark, you can please rebut.
Yes. I believe that speed cameras and reducing speed limits is really the only thing that it accomplishes is increasing fines and taking money out of the pockets of the people. I think if you care about the safety, that speed bumps should be installed because speed bumps actually do save lives. Speed limits and speed cameras just increase fines that come out of people's pockets who are struggling for, you know, they should obey the speed limit, there's no question about it, and they should be penalized. But if you know, as my opponent said, you know, you need people to follow the laws, and people are still speeding, they're just paying for it. If you actually want to solve the problem, especially in school zones, you put speed bumps to actually reduce the speed and not take money out of people's pockets.
Thank you. And let me direct a question to you. You've said that you want your constituents to have better education with life skills and that you advocate for more charter and specialized schools. Please elaborate on that.
Well, I think life skills are something that we see a lot of you know, people who grow up and don't exactly know how to do simple things like change a tire or know what a Phillips head screwdriver is. And I think, you know, on the first day of class, it could just be one semester. It doesn't have to be something that's specializing in the curriculum. It could be one semester, junior and senior year. The first day of class, kids put together their own desk from IKEA or whatever the case may be. And the last day of class, they take it apart, learning simple things that a lot of people pay other people to do, and not just you know, also learning about bank accounts, what a checking account is, what credit, you know, learning about credit, learning, you know, maybe how to design a website, or different life skills that only take one day of class to learn. In one semester, they'll learn a whole lot of knowledge and have a lot more confidence in knowing a lot of basic things that a lot of people don't know anything about.
Thank you. Dr. Frontus, you want to?
Sure.
Education, yeah.
I'm certainly not adverse for us here in New York City or New York State to have more specialized schools, although I'm talking specifically about New York City. But to be clear, although I'm not averse for us to have more specialized high schools, I think that we have to figure out what's going on with the admissions process. Right now, there's a great debate, if you haven't heard, and maybe I don't know if that's going to come up tonight, in terms of the admission criteria for these specialized high schools. And I'm happy to share my thoughts on that now and maybe again a little bit later. But I think I want people to know that New York State is the only state in the entire United States of America which uses a single criterion for admission to these specialized high schools. So we are an outlier across the entire country. We don't care what your GPA is. We don't care what extracurricular work you've done. We don't care about your letter of references. We don't want you to come in for an interview. We just look at the test scores of one exam. And so I'd be happy to see more specialized high schools when we talk about education. But I think first we have to expand the criteria, make it more inclusive, and maybe there's a bill coming up in the Assembly. I think we need to reimagine who gets admitted to these schools because the outcomes is unequal and it's not diverse. And then we'd be able to reap the benefits of having additional specialized high schools in our city.
Thank you. And I'm going to ask you a question next. Governor Cuomo has been given emergency powers to help deal with the COVID-19 pandemic. Do you think that the legislature should take back its authority at this point in time and become an equal partner in government once again?
Yes.
That might be the shortest. No.
I mean, I think the question speaks for itself. You use the key words. I'm like a teacher now. You use the words emergency powers. We were in the middle of an emergency. We are still dealing with the COVID crisis, but I think the moment of emergency is a little bit behind us when he needed to do that, and we provided him with that support, and I think now it's high time for us to be equal again.
Thank you. Mark?
Yes, I agree. No, the short answer.
This is too easy. Come on. Now, start throwing things at me.
I do believe that the power, Governor Cuomo got too much power, and I'm glad that my opponent agrees with that.
Thank you. Let me ask you, you've raised the issue of bail reform and said that you would replace bail reform with better policing, if I'm quoting you correctly. Where do you start, and how would you go about that if you were elected?
Well, I don't know if that's an exact quote, but I do think better policing is a part of it. But with bail reform, I think Nicole Malliotakis fought to make some of the adjustments there because it wasn't what they advertised it to be. There is an issue for bail reform, and people who are innocent, who can't afford bail or don't have the opportunity for a fair trial because they're spending time in jail. So I do believe that there's a need for bail reform, but you do have some repeat offenders who were released, and the idea of giving out Mets tickets to people I think is ridiculous. And you know, there needed to be some changes. Nicole Malliotakis fought to make some of those changes happen. I think, you know, the judges are there to make a decision whether the person is a risk to society, how much evidence is there, and I think more needs to be back in the power of the judges of deciding who based on the severity of the crime, based on repeat offenses, based on the risk to society, on whether that person gets released. We had somebody, I believe it was in the Bronx, that was arrested over 90 times and assaulted an old lady on the street. So that's not a... We can't continue to have that. We're seeing the lax soft on crime policies by current Democratic leadership, and that's resulting in an increase in crime, and we're seeing that as pretty obvious. I think with better policing, I think we need more community events with policing. I think different neighborhoods need to organize events through mailers at different communities where the precinct has, you know, whether it's a block party or whatever the case may be, so that the neighborhood knows their police officers in their precinct and they're more involved with the community. I think that's one idea of taking a step forward and having better community policing.
Thank you. Dr. Frontus?
Sure. John, if I heard you correctly, you asked the question a certain way. You said to my opponent, I've heard you say that instead of bail reform, we should have better policing. Is that how you phrased the question?
Yeah, I said that, yes. I said that when he raised the issue of bail reform, he would replace bail reform with better policing. That was
right. I just wanted to make sure that that's what I heard. So I want to say I agree with the concept of better policing, which my opponent has spoken on tonight. I'm happy to hear that because I find it very, very sad and unfortunate that we've created a very false dichotomy in the way that we have public discourse about police and community in our society. We've all gotten so angry and so hot under the collar that people are suggesting that there's only room in your heart to support one. You can either support the community or you can either support the police, and we know that that's not true. But as a matter of clarity, I want to be clear and say that I don't believe that community policing takes the place of bail reform. Bail reform is a separate concept which stands on its own feet, and as far as I'm concerned, better community policing cannot fix bail reform. The issue of bail reform specifically has to do with fairness and equality and what kind of justice system do we want to have here in New York State. As many of you know, there was a young man a couple of years ago who was arrested for stealing a backpack. And he spent 3 years in Rikers Island because his family couldn't afford $3,000. And that case really highlighted the abuse that was taking on in our jails and why we need to have bail reform, because what's happening is you have two people who are committing allegedly, right, who are being accused of the same exact things, but one person is able to walk out the door and the other person is spending 3 years in solitary confinement because your family couldn't afford $3,000. I don't think anyone thinks that that's fair or equal treatment. So that's why we passed the bail reform package in Albany.
I do want to be clear, just because that statement is inaccurate. I never said replace bail reform with better policing, so I'm not sure why the wording was there. But my statement got into the need for bail reform and changes on the existing bail reform and better policing, two separate issues. So I just want to make sure that that's clarified.
done. And let me ask you this, Mark. You've said that you would advocate for cutting taxes and reducing spending if elected. Am I correct?
Yes.
Please explain how you would go about doing this.
Well, it goes to the misunderstanding of what trickle-down economics is. When you see cutting in taxes, you see an increase in business owners being able to expand and open up a second location and creating more jobs. So the trickle-down economic effect isn't necessarily what people try to make it seem like, oh, the rich people are going to have more money and they're going to give it to you. Like, obviously, then it doesn't work that way. It doesn't mean that the minimum wage people are going to get a higher salary. It means that there's going to be more jobs available when you reduce taxes because you have other small businesses able to expand. And on the corporate level, even for larger businesses, you have the stock prices increasing, which makes the stock market better, which means people's retirement 401k accounts go up. On the flip side, when you increase taxes, you have reverse trickle-down effect because you increase property taxes and then rent increases. And it creates, the less of an opportunity to expand. So increasing taxes doesn't have, it seems like Democrats think money grows on trees, and the only increased spending and increased taxes is the only solution for things, but it really doesn't work that way in reality. And that's why I believe even the Trump's tax cut, you had, they talk about the deficit increasing. Tax revenue actually increased despite the fact that he reduced taxes because more people were working and more people were paying taxes, and the overall revenue increased, even though the deficit went up because the spending also went up on plans like Social Security that are already existing in place. So I think, especially now with people trying to recover, reducing taxes, it seems like the logical thing to do to help people recover, to help businesses grow. We see so many businesses closing. Increasing taxes on those businesses now especially will be especially harmful.
Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Frontus? So
generally speaking, we need taxes here in New York State. We need taxes to fund the various programs and services that we have here in the state. But as I'm certain that most of you know tonight, New York State is facing some $6 billion of a deficit, and we are in a state of emergency. I do agree that right now, this particular moment in history, this is not the right time to nickel and dime the people of New York State. As I stand here tonight, I can honestly tell you that I'm angry and I'm upset because people are suffering. Regular people are suffering, our senior citizens are suffering, our small businesses are suffering. So I do think that there's room at the table now for us to tax New Yorkers, but the real question is, who should we be taxing? And this is a perfect time to remind everyone that many of us in Albany have been fighting and advocating for a millionaires and a billionaires tax. I think that a wealth tax is a very simple way for us to generate some revenue here in the state of New York and help us with the deficit that we're facing.
Thank you. I have a question that I'm hoping to get both of. I'm going to direct it at you, Dr. Frontus, but I'd love to get your take on it too. The rise in the number of illegal home conversions has greatly impacted Dyker Heights. We've addressed this with the other candidates. It's contributed to overcrowding in schools, a decrease in parking spaces, water shortages, and overall unsafe living conditions. Could you please address how you would try to stop the spread of illegal home conversions?
Sure. God, as soon as you read that question, a feeling came over me because this is one of those things where, to me, again, I've often felt that we created this sort of false dichotomy where we either care about safety or we want to, bulldoze down all of the illegal conversion homes that we have here in southern Brooklyn. So just to answer your question, I can actually say that I'm the assembly sponsor for Senator Gernardis' illegal conversion bill. I'm assuming he spoke about that when he was here, and that's one of the bills that we introduced in the New York State Assembly. So I wanted to be known for the record that I do care very much about this issue when it comes to safety, when it comes to all of the issues that you spoke about. But what I do want us to be very, very careful with, unfortunately, and certainly I'm not accusing anyone here tonight, but we have seen people use this issue as a sort of, ruse to complain about whether it's immigrants or make sort of disparaging remarks in terms of who should be living here in southern Brooklyn or who doesn't deserve, to be here in our community. And I want to make sure that we don't use this issue, well, not here tonight, but I'm saying people in our community, I want to make sure that we don't use this issue in that way. For me, illegal conversion should only be talked about when we're talking about safety. And I think that the legislation will address that. And it's also a quality of life issue. But we need to understand, why are people even set up in that situation to begin with? And I think it requires some compassion and some understanding. Most of the people who are doing illegal conversion, we might think that they're just greedy landlords, but a lot of time they're people trying to get by. They're immigrants. They don't have another place to stay, and this is literally a last resort. So this is a perfect example when we talk about policing and the law and criminal justice. I don't think this is the same thing as like a person peddling drugs in the community or, harming children or something like that. And we have to find a way to still crack down on it while still understanding the circumstances that leads a lot of people to that situation to begin with.
Thank you. Mark, please. Well,
for those that aren't familiar with the illegal home conversions, we're not really, the community is not concerned about, some small amounts of, adding an extra tenant in a basement or anything of that nature. There's instances where people are cramming, 7 people in one room in bunk beds and things of that nature, and it's a fire hazard. People have actually died from it, and many of the other issues with parking spaces and water and things of that nature that it creates. Now, Vincent Gentile, who's a city council member previously, a Democrat city council member, he passed a bill to fine people who are doing this. I believe it was $10,000 or $15,000, but if you're not catching anybody doing it, the fines really don't matter. I think it's a community issue, and I think the way that one of the ideas that I would have is to put out a mailer to the people of the residents giving, if we're fining people $10,000 or $15,000, I don't recall the exact amount, give a $1,000 reward if you suspect one of your neighbors to be doing illegal home conversions, and I think we'll see a crackdown on it.
Thank you. where you got the closing remarks, and I believe, Mark, you won the toss.
Yeah, I'm second in the closing remarks.
You want to close a second?
Happy to. Thank you very much. First of all, to everybody watching us tonight. First of all, to everyone watching us tonight, I just want to say thank you for following this debate. I want to thank the Dyker Heights Civic Association once again. Thank you to John Alexander for moderating this debate tonight, and to my opponent. To the voters of the 46th Assembly District, my first term was not exactly smooth sailing, but I think if you follow me closely and you follow me on social media and you communicate with me in my office, you know that I've been fighting hard from day one. I've given this job and this position all that I have. I've been fighting really, really hard. And I can honestly say that when I go to bed at night, I am very proud of the work that I have been doing on behalf of this community here in Southern Brooklyn. So I'm standing here tonight, I'm asking for your support, and I'm asking you to send me back to Albany because the work has just begun. There's a lot more work to do. As I stand here tonight, I didn't get a chance to tell you guys about some of the things that I have planned for 2021, and certainly I won't be able to rattle them off tonight, but I do want to say that you're going to start noticing that one of the main agenda items coming out of my office is economic recovery and economic mobility. Right now, the people of New York are hurting. We have people that are losing their jobs en masse. We have people that are not able to pay their bills. We have people that are worried about getting evicted. And so I'm going to be fighting for you and your family to support you in any way I can and to make sure that I offer programs and services in the community to help people with economic recovery and mobility. And for those reasons, I'm asking you for your confidence and for your vote for another term. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Frontus. Mark, please.
Yes, again, there's a lot of politicians out there who are taking credit for things that other people wrote, other people's ideas, and just because they voted on a bill, they're taking credit as if they created it. We see a lot of politicians making promises, but not actually having ideas. I put the full list of nonpartisan ideas on my website, markforny.com, for everyone to look at all the creative ideas that I have to make a better community. And although a millionaire's tax sounds like a good idea, we're seeing a lot of those millionaires leave, and Cuomo's offering to cook them dinner as if that's going to incentivize them from coming back. And with those millionaires leaving, the jobs go along with them. So although it sounds nice, the actual effect of actions like that cause people to leave. And we're seeing a lot of residents that are sick of the crime and sick of all of the different things happening because of the current Democratic leadership. None of the other Democrats are standing up to Cuomo or de Blasio on their destructive policies. I'm not leaving New York. I could get a job anywhere in the country with the different professional license that I have, but this is my hometown, and I'm not going to go and leave when I see it being destroyed. So I'm here to fight, and I hope that you'll help me fight and win on November 3rd. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. I just want to say, first of all, thank you both for being here. I said earlier when we opened this, I said, I was hoping that this would be, I said that I was proud of the candidates running for office in this community, and I was hoping we would have a very informative and dignified debate. And this entire evening has been, and thank you both for enlightening us, talking to us about in a very civil and respectful manner. So thank you both, and thank you to the Dyker Heights Civic Association. And I think we showed everybody how it's done, I hope.